All right, we will go ahead and get started. We have quite a few joining us today, so it might take a little bit, but we also have a full packed agenda. We have our welcome, we have our case studies here in a few minutes. Then we'll transition to our Tableau new features, and we'll wrap up our day talking about TC20 and how to register for that. So welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Henry. I'm the Colorado SLED Tableau user group leader. I'm a manager with the Business Analytics Management Consulting firm, Plant Moran. And so my contact information is there. You would have received kind of that invite from me or forwarded from me. We have Jamie Kimes, who supports the user group as well, and Melanie Houston, our account executive for Tableau, and she works with many of you who are at that state level. So we do have some education and some other Tableau users who may not go under Melanie's accounts, but feel free to reach out and ask questions, and she can make those connections as well. So our grassroots efforts for this user group started a few years ago, and there was just a dozen of us sitting around a table at CDPHE, and we've now evolved over time to this larger group. So this is our first virtual meeting, so please be patient if there are any technical issues, which there was already one for the day, so hopefully that's the last one. This meeting is being recorded by Tableau. It will be posted on the Tableau user group page. So just to give you that heads up. And then the future meetings will be able to leverage additional technology to increase attendee participation. So Tableau is really supporting user group leaders. And so this is kind of a sit and get today, but next meeting we'll have some more survey interactive ways to engage with one another. You will be receiving a survey from me asking for feedback about what topics you would like covered in future meetings, and I will also be requesting if there are areas that you would like to speak on as well. This user group functions for you and by you, and so your participation in this user group will really keep it going and be successful. So like I mentioned earlier, our user group has grown over the years, and so here's kind of what we currently have. I think actually there might have been 2 additions early this morning for joining us. 84 had registered, and kind of here's the breakout of who's sitting on this call. So we have majority are those state agencies, and there were a couple organizations that really kind of supplied services at that state level. So I kind of bucketed you in there. We have higher education folks on the call, K-12 on the call, business services such as myself, so consultants and other industries who provide services to public sector organizations. And then we just have some others in there, right? And so we welcome everybody. Tableau user groups is just a great way to learn what each other are doing out there. And even if it's not your industry that is being spoken about, just make that mental crosswalk and how it might apply to what you're doing with Tableau. So I foresee that our next virtual meeting will be in December, February, and April. That's kind of what I have in mind. And so again, I will send out a survey asking for what works for the group. Obviously with I think over 150 on the email list, it's kind of hard to find the best fit for everybody, but we'll do our best. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. So we have some use cases this morning. Many people did respond wanting to participate, and I send huge thank yous to all of you. And if you are interested, so I have you saved for future meetings, but if you are interested in sharing a use case, please email me. And I would be glad to add you to that list, and we'll plug you in as it makes sense with everyone's schedule. So I am actually going to stop sharing and transition this over to Morgan at Colorado School of Mines. And let me stop sharing. Did it stop sharing? Are we good? Sorry, managing multiple monitors.
Yes, you're good.
You weren't sharing, so there's nothing for you to stop sharing.
Oh no, it lost that when I reconnected. All right, well, I basically said everything that was on the screen, not too exciting. I'll show the contact information at the very end. So, all right, Morgan, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you. Let me get everything going here. All right, can you all see my slides? Oop.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm Morgan Casimus. I'm a data scientist at Colorado School of Mines, and I'm going to talk to you about 2 dashboards and then just briefly about our move to Tableau Server. So we'll start with moving to Tableau Server. We actually started our journey in Tableau Server last fall, so I think it's pretty close to about 1 year ago today. I remember that because it was also like the week after I went on maternity leave. So my boss and Plant Moran is who helped us launch our Tableau Server, did most of the heavy lifting while I was out, but we're really excited, and we opted to move to Tableau Server because we needed a tool that would give us the opportunity to put data in the hands of the decision makers when they needed it most. And we all know there are a lot of tools out there for doing that, but Tableau Server is one of the best, especially when it comes to being able to organize data, to give the executive leaders the opportunity to answer not just the one question of how many or what, but that next level detail. So that's why we decided to make the move. We also knew that it would give us the opportunity to free up some time in institutional research and strategic analytics to work on higher level projects. We're not quite there yet because even though we started in fall last year, we're still in sort of the infancy stage of it. We have Tableau Server, it's up, it's live, but we don't have a lot of things in there. I'll talk about that in a minute. One of the other reasons that we were really excited is it gives us more opportunity to give our executive team some point in time frozen data pieces as well as some real-time data information. And I say real-time, we connect all of our data through our operational data store that updates every night from Banner, which is our student system. So it's not live data, but it's pretty close to live data depending on the dashboard. So what were some of the pain points as we moved to Server? I think the first one is something everybody feels when they use new technology, and it's new technology. There was a training and learning curve on my end, not so much on Tableau. I've been using Tableau for a lot of years, but we've used Prep to connect to all of our data, and so I've been learning Prep. That is an amazing technology, and I really highly recommend it if you are not using it already. But we also have the idea of training, not only training for us in institutional research, but training for our end users. Anytime you put a new technology in front of a senior level executive, there's questions and there's a lot of gentle touch that needs to go with providing them the dedicated time and energy they need to be comfortable and learn a new tool. And then the other big point that we had, excuse me, was defining the difference between Server and our reporting tool. We currently use Cognos for our reporting tool. It can be a really robust reporting tool, and for us it really is, but we wanted to make sure that there were distinct differences between why you would go to Server versus when you would go to Cognos. Server we have defined as our aggregate level, high level data that for the majority of things, you won't be able to get down to an individual unit of record, so not to an individual faculty or an individual student. So it's really designed not for the operational day-to-day things, but for the higher level and standard frequently sort of asked questions piece. So now I'll talk into our enrollment dashboard. So this was designed, it was our first one, and it was really designed to satisfy the FAQ that we get all the time. Predominantly this is focused on headcount, but we do have a few things in there about full-time equivalency or FTE and student credit hours or SCH, excuse me. This one was fantastic. Plant Moran built this for us. We love it. It's a really, really robust dashboard that has just a lot of different sheets in it that really gives the end user a lot of flexibility in how and what they want to look at. Some of our pain points here are the data connection. This was the first dashboard that we took from Plant Moran and then connected it back to our actual ODS. And that posed some challenges, as I didn't know, but I learned when you upload an Excel sheet to Tableau, it will automatically correct the data item names from everything being in capitalized, which is how it comes out of our ODS, to everything being in sort of sentence case, which is fantastic. I love that. However, when you reconnect that data source back to the actual ODS, it maintains that capitalization. And so I had to go in and replace all the data items and change all of the calculations that were in the dashboards in order to sort of robustly connected to the data. That was not something I was expecting. And so that was an interesting thing that we found that now we know, not a big deal, but we definitely got to budget the time for it, 'cause depending on how big of the dashboard is, you know, that's a fair amount of time. The other pain point that we had is creating those MIND standards. And this was an interesting one. It was fantastic in getting us started on our standards. The layout, the sizing, the headers, the text, everything like that, Plant Moran was fantastic in getting us sort of set in all of those things. However, once we finished our time with Plant Moran, we had some other things that we hadn't really thought about at the time, such as, you know, filters and parameters. How do you want to distinguish the two? Do you want to distinguish two? We went with all of our filters say filter, all of our parameters say select. Because the way that they function are a little different. We want to make sure that our end users have that sort of awareness. Our main collaborators outside of Plant Moran for our enrollment dashboard has been our test partners around campus, and we've really focused on the enrollment management team and our graduate and undergraduate deans. These are people who are going to use this enrollment dashboard time and time again, all day, every day, for board of trustees meetings, for presentations to our president, and so we wanted to test with them to make sure it would meet all of their needs. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and dive into our dashboards. I'm not going to full screen this because that's going to make it challenging to come back and forth to it. A little overview, as you can see, this is a really, really hefty set of dashboards. We've got a lot of information in here. One of the things that we've created as a part of our standards was every dashboard has this introduction page, as well as on the back end, they've got a feedback and a Minds Help Center. And I'll dive into those as we get into it, but I'll just start with our introduction. And I'm not going to go through every dashboard on here, just so you are aware. So this is our introduction page, some standard language. How do we use these dashboards? We talk about filters, we talk about parameters, just some things that people who aren't familiar with Tableau may not know. We always give this data details information. You know, where does the data actually come from? Is it a frozen point of data? Is it a live data source, live real data? And then I work with engineers. At the end of the day, engineers want to download the data, so we tell them how to do that up front. And then we go into a little bit about our data protection and use with a link to our Minds data policies. And this is really important for us because while it is all aggregate level data, we want to make sure that people see this data and they know that, hey, I can't be giving this out to, you know, random person who calls me for an interview without going through the proper channels of checking that information. Not that the data is valid, but we want to make sure that data that goes out to press is vetted through the process that we have set in place. On our enrollment dashboard, because it uses a freeze and not everybody who's going to use this data really knows or understands what a freeze is, I went ahead and created this freeze table so people can understand when the freeze happens, you know, what does it mean, what's the flow of it, and then how does it relate to the different academic periods. So our next tab that I'll show you is our summary table. This is one of my favorites. And it's one of my favorites because it gives a lot of information without gives a lot of information with a lot of opportunity without being sort of overwhelming, which sometimes some of our dashboards can, because there's just so much options for you to choose from. So we have, first and foremost, I think other people, and I like the name, our big angry number up here. This is just the distinct head count of students in a given academic year. Because we're filtering here on all terms, this is looking at last year because we don't have all terms for this year. But if I filter this to fall, you'll see this automatically moves to fall, which is going to be fall 2020. So what we currently have. We also have, you know, where do our students come from, the top states and the top countries. And then my favorite thing about this dashboard is our summary reports themselves. So this is actually a parameter. This is the information that folks around campus, especially that executive team, need all the time. You know, tell me how many students we have, tell me that breakdown of just the new undergraduates, tell me the online residential breakdown of students, how many are on campus, how many are, you know, doing online programs. And so this parameter allows people to filter through any of these things, and then they have all the information right there. And so it's just really, it's really a fantastic way to give a lot of information on sort of, not the landing page, but the first page of actual detail. And a lot of people will never have to go past this original summary page, which I think is fantastic. That's the point, is to make it easy for people to use. One of the other dashboards I want to show you is our headcount, FTE, and student credit hour. We do have some of the filters that flow all the way through, like example, the filter term group here, but we can select all, and so we can see more information. And this just shows the breakdown of what is the student head count. Again, this is distinct students. What is the full-time equivalency of those students? And then what is the student credit hour, or credit hour production is another way I've heard it called before. This dashboard mimics a lot of the other ones that we've worked with and created in the past. So here's sort of some basic information. And this is all broken down by the degree level, undergraduate and graduate. And then here's the same information in table format with parameters. So this table, the top one, allows you to filter all of these things, and you can get down and say, I just want to look at, students of a certain race or ethnicity, and a certain student type, such as, the new freshmen or the continuing students, or within a certain portfolio. Whereas this one allows you to layer things. And so we wanted, again, to give that end user a lot of opportunity to look at data in different ways, because we don't just get asked what is, the count of students of this way, but we get what are the students of this and this. And so this layering of parameters allows us to do that. Let's see, the last two things I want to show you here are just our feedback and our Minds Help Center. So as we're sort of new into launching Server, we really wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to get real-time information back from our users about, was this useful? Was it, would you recommend it to other folks on campus? Were you able to answer your question? Do you have any general feedback? And then obviously we need to know what dashboard they're referring to. This is a little simple right now, because like I said, we're new into Server, and we still don't have everything fully available for people to look at, but that will get expanded later. But this little Qualtrics survey that we've just embedded into Tableau allows people to give us real-time feedback, immediately at the end of their use of it, to say, hey, this was great, or no, this was really crappy. And then our other aspect that we have is our Help Center, which is a ticket. So again, if somebody's having technical issues, or says, I would really like to see these things added, or hey, I could really use a dashboard on blank, they can submit that request directly from Tableau Server itself. You can also find this website online, but we wanted to put everything that anybody would need to get support with Tableau Server in the actual dashboards. So every dashboard that we publish into Server will have the introduction page, the feedback page, and the Minds Help Center page. All right, I'm going to keep rolling unless there are questions. Perfect. So next I'll talk about our priority registration. Our priority registration is our process for monitoring registration of students before census. So this is how many students have registered, how many courses are they taking, so what's the credit hour, what's the full-time equivalency, all of these different things. And we really decided to make the priority registration dashboard because we wanted to get rid of a manual process. Currently, and I say currently because we're still in the middle of this dashboard to be fully launched, is the data is pulled from our operational data store. It's added, summed, all that stuff, manipulated, and then it's published into an Excel, and then that Excel is sent out to different people around campus, from Dr. Johnson to all of our VPs to the budget office, all of the things that all the people who would need that information. And while that's not the worst process ever, Tableau Server allows us to automate that and give it to people at the click of a button. We can schedule it out, so we can send it to them directly, so they still get the email reminder, but they also don't have to wait for somebody to do it, and they can do it whenever they want. We also wanted to move this to Server because it gives our end user more flexibility by being able not just to look at what's happened today, but what has happened at a later point in time. So if somebody's examining data and they really want to understand registration in July, moving it to Server has given them that opportunity. Our pain points were the Tableau calculations, doing the calculations that compare point in time over time. So what's happened today versus what happened at September 25th, 2019 and 2018. That definitely gave me a few challenges. We got it all worked out, but it was an interesting way to use Tableau that I hadn't done before. And for this particular fall registration, at this point, we've missed our registration cycle. Census was on September 9th, the freeze was on the 14th. And so we'll launch this we'll officially launch this in spring, but internally to institutional research, we've done a lot of work on it, and we're pretty proud of it. So I'll bring this one up now. Basic introduction here, same sort of thing. We don't have any table here because this is live data, so we don't need to explain any freeze information. And I'm just going to show you two actual dashboards in here, and they're just going to be the same dashboard, but one's comparing as of today, and the other one's going to allow you to pick what day you want to look at. So this is where we gave folks a lot of breakdown opportunities. So we can look at, you know, the degree seeking versus the non-degree. You can go down a level in the hierarchy and look at the continuing versus the new. And then we even broke it down one more time because we know folks want to see, okay, well, what does that mean for new freshmen versus new transfer, and then new graduate students? So a lot of hierarchies were used in this set of dashboards to give users that deeper information without it having to be a filter. We didn't really want to do a whole lot of filters on this one because it needs to be a little bit more holistic. We also allow, you know, headcount, full-time equivalency, FTE, student credit hours, and the average credit hour per student. And then here you can see it broken down by the on-campus programs or the online programs. This aspect is really important for our budget department, so we really wanted to make sure they had that at their fingertips. We go over some overall head counts, and then we dive into retention for fall in particular. That idea of looking at retention over time is a really important piece. And so this allows us to look at 3 different cohorts and compare retention rates into year 2, into year 3, and then we can finally see into year 4. And this is one of my favorite graphs on this dashboard. This is the headcount comparison from years prior or previous years. And so here we're looking at the count of student different between the 2019 and 2020. We also show it in 2018 just for a little bit of reference. Then we look at the percent difference, and then we look at that count and percent difference from 2018. So our enrollment management, vice provost, associate provost, I forget her official title, of enrollment management, really wanted this one because she wanted to be able to really compare things over time and back to back. Then we just look at some regular breakdowns again, that things that we get asked all the time. What does the residency look like? What does the ethnicity look like? What is the gender? And how does that compare to years previous? So we just include all that information to make it nice and easy for our executive leader to grab this information. This sort of information goes to our board all the time, especially over summer and as we lead up to different registration periods. So we wanted to make that simple. So this is pretty much the same dashboard, but rather than looking at specifically what's going on today, we've created this parameter that allows you to choose. So you can say, okay, well, I'd really like to look at this in August. Let's understand how things happen then. And then you can look at the same comparisons. So this was really a fun one to create because you can see, you know, back in August, we were actually down compared to 2019 where we ended up above it. And so looking at these things allows our deans and enrollment management folks to know that, okay, well, what's happening right now, we've seen this in the past and we know that, okay, it may look bad, but it's not actually going to be bad, or man, things are looking really, really good, but we know that maybe we have this drop in a couple weeks. And so we just need to be aware of that. So just gives those folks the opportunity to dive deeper and understand not just the today, but the really larger over time comparison rates. And then just lastly, we end with our feedback and our Minds Help Center, just to, again, to put all that at the fingertips of our end user. Any questions?
Thank you, Morgan. That was great. So if you have any questions for Morgan regarding things you've seen or their process or approach at Minds, go ahead and unmute yourself. And we can spend the next 5 to 7 minutes before we transition over to CDPHE.
Don't see anything in the chat, Stephanie, just as an FYI. This is Melanie, other than lots of accolades for the great work that Morgan has done and for what she was able to share. Thank you, Morgan.
No, thank you all.
Hey, Morgan.
Yeah.
This is Nielsen Valensky. I'm with the CBI at the Department of Public Safety. Mm-hmm. And CSM is actually my alma mater, so.
Oh, wonderful.
It's good to see that they're actually using this. I got a few questions just because public safety is, you know, in talks with OIT. That's for those outside the states, the Office of Information Technology, to help pretty much get on the same road or path that you're on right now. So I'm just curious in terms of capital costs for the server, the software, licenses, training, and whatever other installation costs we're provided by Plant Moran. Can you give us an estimate about how much it actually costs to get this up and running?
You know, I actually don't know that. My boss, Trisha, would, but she had another meeting, unfortunately, at the same time. But I can get that information from her, and I'm happy to send it back to you.
I might just add something to that, if it's okay. This is Melanie with Tableau. It's a great question. And just for public safety, just so that you know, I was able to work with Katie Hull, Katie Schmatz, used to be Katie Schmatz, your director of IT. And what's been established at State of Colorado OIT, there's already a server in place that you can leverage. So it would not be starting from ground zero. So it'd be just sort of an incremental add for your agency. So much different in the way of added cost to what you're doing with Tableau today. And if I can help you and follow up with this, I'm happy to do so. We work closely with the OIT team that manages today actually 2 Tableau server environments, one that is HIPAA controlled and one that is a public facing server. So didn't mean to interrupt you there, Morgan, but it would be a very different scenario than starting from ground zero and deploying a server just for the Department of Public Safety. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful.
Melanie, my name's Clay Stewart. I do consulting with fire departments and emergency services. I was just kind of curious, what drove the visualizations you built? Were there like reports you had prior, and what kind of feedback and feedback about the use and feedback about how you built those?
Yeah, so that's exactly what drove it. What are the questions that we get asked the most often? And you know, how do we make those in a visual, easy to use format? We also have a pretty light Tableau public website on the Minds IR webpage, and we also wanted to make sure that we covered all of that data. And so we had sort of a starting point, but this gives us a lot more. So yeah, that's exactly it. You know, we sort of sat down and said, what are all the questions that we get asked all the time? That'd be great that we don't have to, you know, go dig up for something. And sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
No, I think that it was driven by the users.
Yep, very much so. And yeah, the testing. Every time we've tested it with folks, if we've had, that was actually where, I guess I forgot to mention it, but on the enrollment one, we have a filter little box. So we've got all the filter section, and then we have a box below that says everything that's been filtered. That box came out of user testing that said, I forget what I've done, and I'd be really happy, it'd be really nice to have a box that tells me. I don't think it's the most efficient way to do it personally, but they asked for it, so we gave it to
them. Morgan, I have another question.
Yeah.
In the screenshots that you showed, it shows like a lot of nice data that's reported. I'm curious to know if you have plans to incorporate any predictive analysis, like any logistic regression, time series analysis to help project, obviously, you know, maybe 12 months, you know, 1 fiscal year, 2 fiscal years into the future, because I think a lot of executive level decisions, much like at public safety, usually depend on, you know, trying to foresee the future and to see some anticipated needs, but usually the data obviously needs to be there. So I'm curious to know, what are your plans to incorporate those kinds of predictive techniques into the server?
Yeah. So yes, I don't have any specific plans for that, but I absolutely want to. One of the functionalities that I am dying to free some time up to use is the integration between Tableau and R, so that we can run some of those different analyses in R and then still nicely visualize it in Tableau. But that's on my wish list of things that I want to do right now. I haven't had any time to actually dive into that. Everything that I've heard and read about it is once you get there, it's a pretty easy connection to make, but we're not there yet. But yeah, that's our, once we get the base reporting up and running, and we're still probably a year away from that, because we need to get finance in there, we need to get HR and employee records and all of that sort of stuff in there, then that's where I want to go. We are working on some student success models and risk analysis things that may not go I don't know that they'll necessarily go full visualizations in Tableau. A lot of that'll depend on how we end up creating those models. We're having the conversations about what needs to be included in those models right now. But we're still far way down the road from that, unfortunately.
Sorry, one other question just
Yeah.
makes me curious because I have to sort of anticipate these things when we try this at public safety. So in Colorado, again, for those outside of Colorado, we have the Colorado Open Records Act, which is the same as the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act at the national level. But so in Colorado, we for public safety, we get a lot of CORA requests, obviously, because of what's going on in the national media and in scenes and, you know, cities and, you know, the police and public interaction. So we get a lot of CORA requests. So I'm curious, if you were to get a CORA request, would you provide just the underlying table data, or would you actually provide some of the screenshots, some of the dashboards that you have already developed, or would you keep those separate?
So I'll start with, it would have, for us, it would have to come from our legal office. So the open records request would go through our legal, and then they would tell us. But we would, if it's something we have built in Tableau, I would probably just go into Tableau, export the Excel, and do it that way. I feel like we could always export the image or export the whole thing to a PDF. I've found exporting to a PDF out of server is not very nice. We originally had all the pages lined up to be a nice paper format, but it doesn't cut things off. It just shrinks it to be on one page. And so that was no good. And we did that because we're still sort of living, our executive team is still sort of living in the paper world where, you know, they don't necessarily want to see something on a screen, they want to see it in a PDF or whatever. So hopefully this will get away from that. But for something like that, yeah, if it's something that I have built in Tableau, I would definitely just go in and export the Excel. It's going to export it to a nice crosstab. I actually think exporting it out of server into Excel, especially in the crosstabs, is nicer than when you do it out of Tableau desktop for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but it seems to come out a little bit nicer. But all of our data is suppressed in server, so there's no individual level record that anybody can get down to, but you can export a really beautiful CSVs in crosstab form.
All right, so if you have any further questions for Morgan, please feel free to use the chat feature. For honoring time's sake, we're going to switch over to Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So Lauren, I'm going to transition it over to you now. Thank you again, Morgan.
Sounds good. I will share my screen here. So my name is Lauren Spear. I work at Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and I am the Performance Management and Data Visualization Specialist. And I'm here with Tavio, who's going to really have the bulk of the presentation around our COVID-19 data visualizations. And, oops, I always do that. Why do I do that? Present. It's the big yellow button. Gotta hit it. Around our COVID-19 data visualization. So I kind of wanted to just set the scene of basically how we rolled this out, because it was, it really leveled us up in the last 6 months or so in terms of how we push data out to the public. And it really highlighted, you know, kind of a lot of the weaknesses that we had, and also just really what the demand was from the public. And around this particular topic, the demand for data was just insatiable. So yeah, so going viral. You can chat your LOLs in there if you want to enjoy on the irony here. But really, when I'm speaking about going viral, we really did go viral with our dashboards. It just happens to be, it was a virus as well. So I just want to talk about our three main dashboards, really the three iterations. I built the first one. Within 2 weeks, I had 2.38 million views. Then I transferred it over to Tavio, and it quickly escalated and grew from there. And then the dashboard that Tavio here is going to show already has almost 2 million views after a month. So we really did go viral with this one, and kind of a bucket list thing I can check off. So when we first started, I wanted to show you my very first dashboard here, just really quickly. It is basically the Tableau resource, COVID-19 resource dashboard that they provided. I built this on kind of the Sunday before things got crazy, which was March 8th. And I trimmed it so it was just Colorado. I think I added some logos in there, and then I literally just shot it over to our EPIs and say, hey, you know, I built a dashboard. We should probably think about standing something up really quickly. And they quickly came back and said, well, we got to build something more complete with our data, not I think it was the Johns Hopkins data. So this is the first iteration, using a couple of band numbers there, or big angry numbers, and then just kind of a long scroll of all these different data points that we thought people might like. We quickly learned that people really just wanted text tables. You can see kind of just a glimpse there. I'm going to leave more time for Tavio so he can really go over his dashboard because it's a little bit more complete. But yeah, the feedback we got early on was that people didn't really care too much about charts and graphs. They just wanted to see the number for their county or all the numbers, and just a few kind of big aggregate numbers that we're seeing there at the top. And I'm a Reddit and Twitter user, so I got to see really quickly feedback like I had never seen before on our dashboards, which at the time was kind of scary because people would escalate things really quickly to a Cora request where we're required to give them basically everything. And so we were scrambling on how to avoid all those Cora requests because they were coming in daily. And, you know, for good reason, folks definitely needed to be able to have access to data, especially given that, you know, some states, well, there was just news that people were trying to hide things in certain states. And we wanted to be as open as possible. So it took us a while to finally get to a point where those Cora requests were going away. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of set the scene now, and now we're finally in our third iteration of this dashboard. I want to introduce quickly Tavio. He can have the bulk of the time here, but he's a data analyst here in the immunization branch here at CDPHE. He's built a wonderful immunization dashboard that I think was instrumental in upping our vaccine rates last year. Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and hand it over to Tavio. Go ahead and take it away. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it. So yeah, like Lauren was mentioning, we did get a lot of feedback, and so we made some good changes. Kind of the reasons for some of these changes too, at least from my end of it, we, like Lauren mentioned, kind of get accused of hiding things, and for us specifically in Colorado, we got accused of hiding things inside of filters. So I think we saw a really good example of filters and parameters, the drop downs. In our last presentation from Morgan, and that was what we were getting accused of hiding things in, was, well, you have to click this drop down so people don't know that an item is there or that a breakout is available to them. And that's the stress of doing it for something that's you know, as public facing. We can't just explain to people to use a filter. I don't personally think that's hiding anything, but that was where people thought we were hiding information that we didn't want people to know or people to see. Also as well, a lot of other people had been creating dashboards around different topics. We had a hospital dashboard. We had a dashboard around some CDC death data. We had a dashboard around outbreak data. Then we had the dashboard that Lauren was showing you. So the number of dashboards kept growing. The number of links on our data page kept growing. And it was also forcing people to go to a lot of different places to get you know, all the information that they were looking for. So we're trying to consolidate all of that together. And then as well, the dashboard we had started to get very long. found out that Tableau does have a vertical limit for you. And we were getting pretty close to hitting that vertical limit. So it wasn't something that was sustainable, and we wanted to have more of a, robust type of platform to use. So that's what I've got queued up now to share with you guys. You'll be seeing my screen here in just a moment. So kind of what we went for as far as design was concerned, we wanted a home page, kind of like you're seeing now. And while I talk, I'll let you guys just glimpse the 16 essentially fast facts about Colorado, how we're doing on the COVID response. In case anybody's not keeping up with it, let's give you guys a good opportunity to also see how the state's doing during a pandemic. But we did go for the idea of essentially, one graphic, or a set of them like this that go together, but a very cohesive idea per page, and mainly making it dependent on a lot of the filter and parameter options that you choose. Everything's kind of in one place for us after we move across from this landing page. We did base the landing page on previous CDC Director Tom Frieden's Prevent Epidemics guidelines. So all these facts are kind of where the old CDC Director was kind of gearing us to go in and to present things. We did start to replace a lot of things like asterisks with these info buttons here. If you click on an info button anywhere, you get a bunch of information about what you're seeing on this page. Same thing up here. You can see what's going on those cumulative metrics at the top. And also then our button for a home page. So I've mentioned filters and parameters. We did away with drop-down boxes altogether. I'll kind of show that on our case summary page next. We replaced all the parameters with essentially buttons. And this leverages the parameter actions that are in Tableau. So essentially just created sheets that mimic the look of buttons. Set up parameter actions off these buttons, and this is kind of what drives what you see. So you see one visualization, one graph down below, but we can alter how we're interacting with that graph. We can go weekly. And we can see the rise and fall of cases weekly. We can look at things by the date of onset, by reported date. We get different breakouts below that appear or disappear as they become relevant. And then finally too, we do a little bit of mapping with the case data too. And I think the maps here, another area for, I guess, some Tableau tricks or whatnot. Removing all the background images from the map, you kind of remove all of that noise that Tableau likes to create around showing Wyoming, showing the states that border us. We get away from all of that, kind of get a nice crisp map that's there. But yeah, again, it's a lot of the parameter actions and parameter actions around dashboards, and then parameters driving what metrics that you're seeing. That's really the backbone of a lot of what we did here. And then our buttons across the top here move through different dashboards as well, where you can see different kinds of information that we're showing, and just different COVID breakouts that our EPIs came up with that would be useful, and then us too as data people looking at the data, what was telling to us, what was informative for us. So I've really consolidated all the states' dashboards and information into one section for us, and I think really got a pretty good platform together. So everything here that you're seeing right now, kind of built this two different ways. Built it all from raw data, all in Tableau. So everything that you see, if you go through our public page and you look at all of our data and you look at things that I'm not clicking on or showing you, you can do it all in Tableau with calculations from the raw data. Some of it gets a little hairy, some of it gets a little messy, especially things, I hate to go backwards, but especially things like on our homepage where we're doing a 7-day average, we want just one button or just one number on there. Some of those calculations get a bit long when you're trying to do table calculations with, well, no table. So we did build everything in that fashion, but performance is a real big stopgap when you do it that way. The pre-aggregated data sets, that's certainly the way to go. It runs much faster. Using that performance tool in Tableau in the help section, that really helps you to see where Tableau is getting hung up, what calculations it's getting hung up on, and where you can kind of get most bang for your buck as far as optimization is concerned. But really, it's minimizing the number of sheets that you have on a dashboard, minimizing the number of calculations that appear. And that's something that we do with again, having the parameter buttons here. These sheets are cheap and easy to load. There's not a lot of calculations that go on there. It's one true false calculation. If that parameter is selected, show a lighter color. If it's not, show a darker color. Tableau runs real fast with true false with a Boolean idea. It's very, very fast on those, not as fast with text calculations. So we run everything off of, Boolean calculations, and then essentially 1 or 2 sheets per page. The daily, the weekly, and the maps. In this case here, it is 3 sheets on this whole page, and then all the filter options that are there. For our demographics, it's 2 sheets, this one, and then the weekly breakout. So really minimize the number of sheets that are on the page as well. And then on top of that, though, making the calculations as easy as we can, or using pre-aggregated data sets, doing all the work in SQL, and just shooting yourself out a data set that's there. Kind of is the way to go. It takes a lot of pressure off Tableau, calculation-wise, and lets it do visuals like it does very well. So again, really consolidated a lot of our data. I think our hospital data expanded considerably with a lot of different options that you can go and see, and a lot of different breakouts too, depending on what you're wanting to see. I think there's a whole heap of information in here, and I really don't know what all to click on and cover, because there is there is so much that we've kind of built in here, and I think that's the benefit of doing things like this in these buttons is as soon as you hit a hospital page, you know exactly what you can or can't see. And that's been a real big positive. Lauren talked about all the negative feedback. I got to talk about some of the positive feedback. That was one of the big positive feedbacks that we got, was being able to see what all is available at a hospital level, or if I want to know what's going on with testing, what all is available. Especially when we start doing things like maps, and we have different map boundaries. We have a county level or a regional level. But just knowing that that's the 2 levels that are available to see data in, excluding or including outbreak cases. Could there be a third option? Things like that. This makes it a lot easier, I think, for people to see what it is that is going on. So yeah, I mean, really, it's leveraging, for me in Tableau, it's leveraging a lot of parameters, a lot of parameter actions, and then a lot of calculations and metrics that are driven by parameters themselves. A lot of case statements that end up being in there too. But yeah, it certainly was. I think like Lauren was mentioning, it looks like in the chat too. It was a pretty good exercise in optimization too, especially using that Tableau optimization tool. That was really helpful to pinpoint where the pain areas are on your dashboard and what all you can do to how to fix those up. Really, other than that, I mean, I'd love to take questions, or if there's something on the dashboard particularly that you're interested in COVID that you want to see that I didn't click on. I mean, I'd love to show you guys that. I know in the chat they threw up the link for it on our page, so you guys can also check that out too. But I don't want to take up a ton of time though. If there's any questions or whatnot, love to take those.
I just want to add real quick too that early on I did just a kind of an analysis of all the other states and what data that they provided. We are hands down by far providing way more data and different views than any other state. Whether the state is limited by their analytics capability, or they just kind of want to hide it, because not necessarily hide it, but they just don't want to have those questions that we were getting through social media, email, and Quora request. So, but rather than kind of like obfuscate it, we decided to go out and just keep adding stuff and just seeing how far we could go with Tableau. And almost at every step of the way, Tableau was able to meet our needs for what we had. Obviously, we had a huge learning curve with optimization, but I think we were able to meet that challenge as well. So I hate to pat myself on the back, but I think we really deserve a little bit of credit here. I hope other states see us as a model for how folks, how the public really does love data. And I was chatting with Tavio yesterday. I really feel like the public has really leveled up on their ability to analyze data and ask really tough questions that we actually have to think about and answer back to them. So I hope that trend continues. So there's definitely some hopeful outlook in terms of just like general education around data and statistics, especially related to epidemiology. So.
I guess as we're either waiting for questions or people are very shy to ask questions, there's one thing I do want to mention, I guess as a Tableau tip or trick, whatever you want to call it, though. There's a pain I always see on a lot of Tableau dashboards, and it's around the maps. It's kind of two things, and I touched on one of them earlier, which was, not seeing the noise around the states. I think that's distracting in a way, especially because it's a non-interactive section of the map that really we're not trying to focus on. So I think removing those background maps is important. And even when you do something like the circles here, you want to just plot those. You can use a dual axis on a map and plot essentially the boundary behind it. You could shade it differently, do things like that. You can almost emulate yourself a map in that sense. If we don't need to see things with the street level like we're able to, I think that this is a much cleaner look for a map, especially when you have a square state or like Texas or another like odd shaped state. It kind of starts to make interesting visual graphics that are on there a little bit more interactive. And then also too, and this happens a lot, unfortunately now we're up to 64 counties, so it's no longer a pain for us, but when you have counties or map boundaries that are missing from your data set, whether there's just no cases in our case for COVID or there's no data available for those counties, Tableau doesn't know what to stick in that area for the map boundary. And kind of creates an uninteractive hole in a lot of maps, and I think that's a real big pain when people are interacting with it. I'd rather hover over a county and see Kiowa used to be this case, no cases in Kiowa County, as opposed to just having a blank hole here that's non-interactive. So one of the dual axis maps are kind of a solution to that, Andy. I see that there in the chat. That certainly does work. But if I guess what I'm talking about though is when the county, if you have a county column and you're missing a county, so you have 63 out of the 64 counties, dual axis map isn't even going to fix that since the county is not in your data set. Really what you can leverage though is the custom SQL in Tableau and just a union all statement and stick that county value actually in the data set, and you can have a fully interactive map even if you had data just for 2 counties. And you could show a whole list of counties that are just in gray or a different color to symbolize no data. So I think that there really is the ability to leverage some of that custom SQL in Tableau to create fully interactive maps even when data isn't available for all of our boundaries.
Tavia, we had a question about sharing the workbook file. I know previously that was unavailable. Is that still the case, or have we aggregated it?
We have aggregated it though in most cases. Some of them are not aggregated together. We're not sharing the workbook file itself. We do share all of the data that's underlying to it, and I can tell you, you can replicate this exactly using those data sets. It's what I've built this off of in our pre-aggregated data set. So you certainly can create exactly what I have based on our download files. We don't actually do the download files in Tableau since it is multiple sheets. Although easier for internal people to tell them to click on a sheet and then hit the download button, more difficult for the public, especially when they don't know what is a different sheet and what is not a different sheet, what they're going to get out of the download. So we do have a download section. We'll spit out CSVs for you. We do use Tableau Public to host this. Tableau Public doesn't really have compatibility with a lot of the extensions yet. So some of my download extensions that I'm a big fan of, where you can create essentially what your own download file looks like before somebody downloads it, not available yet to have in Tableau Public. But if you're using a Tableau server, you can certainly install those extensions on your server and create really customized download files. So your CSVs have the naming convention that you want, not necessarily the naming convention that you've named fields in Tableau, and you can organize them as well. Even if they're not alphabetically organized, they're just a custom format. So our downloads are, I guess, a bit limited to those CSV files on the website, but there's some options in Tableau if they're available to you on your server to use for some custom download features.
Thank you again, team. amazing work. The fact that you've just been able to transition into just thinking about like your regular workload and the new asks, and that you're able to turn this around in Tableau. I think that, you know, speaks huge to Tableau being ease of use, but the things that you guys are doing with Tableau, you know, that's that advanced Jedi Zen Master kind of concepts. And so I just give huge kudos to both of you and that team that surrounds you at CDPHE, and this amazing work that is very public facing, and it's, you know, putting your work out there in the public space can be very risky, as you guys alluded to some of the issues and that social media feedback. There is no filter necessarily in that world. And so just great job in taking that all in. You've done some unique things regarding just even the layout of the dashboards and leveraging, like you said, the extensions, but even those parameter actions and such. So my guess is that we'll try to recruit you back to do kind of like a hands-on under the hood tips and tricks of like, give an example of how that was done. Awesome. I'm seeing some thumbs up for agreement. But I think that is pretty powerful, and just usability. You're thinking about the end user, which is huge and invaluable when you're putting things out for people. But then also that performance increase as well. So fabulous work to both of our use case presenters. And again, another plug, this user group exists for you and runs by you. So your willingness to participate in future sessions would be greatly appreciated. Not only use cases, and those would be, you know, how are you currently using it? How did the story come to be in the demo? But even kind of teaching us, right? So we have Eric Schmidt up next from Tableau. Great segue, and he's going to be sharing with us the new features in 2020. Tableau's been, devs have been very busy over the last year creating new improvements to the product, and there are quite a bit of new features that Eric will speak to. And then once Eric wraps up, I just have a couple slides from the user group regarding the TC20. And so Eric, are you good to go and share your screen?
I am. I will start right now.
Thank you.
Share. All right, can you see that, Stephanie?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so as Stephanie mentioned, 2020 has really been a really banner year for Tableau. We released a lot of features that a lot of people have been asking for several years. So one plug I will say at the beginning here, if you have a feature request that you want, go out and log it out there in Tableau, and I'll show you at the end, there's some links that you can log into to log your request, because I mean, we are listening. So a lot of these have been sort of in the hopper for several years, or been requested for several years. And they're finally coming to fruition in this 2020 release. So so far this year, we've had 3 releases. We try to do a quarterly cadence, or at least 4 releases a year. So we're up to 2020.3. We'll probably have another smaller one here in the next few months to round out the year. But I'm going to go through, and I've cut the slide deck down to kind of compress it into the 20 minutes that I have left, or I have to 25, I guess now, to present. But at the end, I'll definitely send out the whole slide deck for you guys to look at. One other caveat, as you may or may not know, Tableau was purchased by Salesforce almost a year ago now, over a year ago. So sort of in this transition here, you'll see our slides like this one here is branded sort of Tableau branded. In the 2020.3 slide deck, we branded it with Salesforce icons, so you'll see some juxtaposition there. It's kind of a little jarring as you go through, but hopefully next time we present, it'll all be on the Salesforce branding slide. So with that, I'll just go ahead and get into it. So this is our agenda. Again, we'll go through all of these pretty high level just based on the time, but if there are any questions while I'm going, if you just want to put them in the chat, I can certainly answer them either after we're done or via email or even a phone call if you wish. So as I mentioned, we did get purchased by Salesforce. As a result, our connection to Salesforce. So if you are a Salesforce user, you want to pull data out and visualize that using Tableau, our connection has gotten a lot better, which obviously it couldn't have helped but get better just based on being a part of the Salesforce family. And actually, this didn't make the slide because it just came out this week. But we do have it now with a Lightning web connector for Salesforce. So if you want to embed not just getting data out of Salesforce, but embedding a dashboard inside of Salesforce, there's a Lightning web connector that just came out. It's on the App Store for Salesforce this week. So definitely, if you're a Salesforce user and you have that need, go out and look at that. I haven't done it yet, but I understand it makes it extremely more simple to do than the options you had prior to this. Prep Builder, if you're not familiar with Tableau Prep Builder is our sort of our ETL light tool, so you can combine data sources from different sources. So a SQL server, a CSV, an Oracle server, you can combine those all using Tableau Prep Builder, but you can also then profile that data. So you can see how many records of each type are in that data set. It allows you to clean the data for you, clean up the data, so you can go through and say, okay, this person dropped the V in Denver, but I know that's the same city, so I'm going to combine those up. It combines them up as inside of Prep, and so it allows you to really give sort of a governed data source to your constituents, so you don't have to worry about all of them maybe making the same mistake or using different data sources. You can push this out to your server. Everybody uses the same data source that you've already cleaned, standardized, and governed. And one of the options now available in Tableau Prep Builder is that level of detail calculation. So if you're familiar with desktop, you probably know about level of details. That option now is in the Prep Builder interface as well. This one's a really nice one for me. If you have a flow with a lot of data sources in it, and this one only really has 4, but if you end up having like 10 or 20, and I've seen some that have that many sources, you never really know where those are being used. So if you click over here in the pane over here, it'll highlight where in your flow that is. It seems like a small thing, but as you get into more complex data flows, it really comes in handy. That's another one, again, that comes in handy with your Prep Builder. If you're pulling large data sources, like 100,000 rows, everything that you do in this flow, Prep Builder processes that data up to that flow. So if I were to click on this step in the flow, it would process all these steps. It would pull all this data down into memory on your desktop all the way up to here. Well, if you got a million rows, that's going to take a long time to do. Just because it's pulling it down to your desktop, you may not have a really beefy desktop. So this little button here allows you to pause those updates. So if you know you just have to go into this step and clean something up, change a formula, or even add a step in here, you can go through and pause that data updates. So you can go through, do your work, and then unpause it, and then it'll process it all the way through. Again, the slowness of Prep Builder as you were doing the development was, at least for me, was a pretty big annoyance. So this is a pretty nice feature. Desktop spatial union file. So we did a lot of work in 2020 with spatial files. So now you can now join those in your desktop. So in this case, if you have, for example, if you have fire data from 2019 and fire data from 2020, the boundaries of the fires, and you want to visualize those all in one dashboard, you can now union that data directly in your desktop. The relationships, and I need to move the order of these, but relation management has been a big change in the 2020.2 desktop release. So if you're on 2020.1 and you go to 2020.2 and you join tables together in your desktop, you'll see a pretty marked change between the two interfaces. I don't have a lot of time to go through it right now, but I would encourage you, as you go, if you go to 2020.2 or even before you go go read up on the relationship management in Tableau desktop, because it is quite a radical change. It's much better for your data modelers and your data sort of explorers to be able to join tables and define the joins, but it is quite a big change. In this case, when we first released 2020.2, you couldn't join on calculated fields. So now you can create it like you would normally do in your older versions. You can now create a calculation to join your data or your tables together. That's another exciting feature of Tableau that just came out in 2020.3. We're getting more and more into the predictive modeling aspect, AI predictions. We're trying to incorporate more and more of that into your desktop. Prior to really this year, if you wanted to do some of these calculations, model percentile, and I'll let you read what they're doing here. If you wanted to do that prior to this release, you would have to bounce out to Python or R to pull back in that calculation into your desktop to visualize it. Well, now you can do these two specific formulas directly in the desktop function. Hopefully, and I don't know this for sure, but hopefully we will have more and more of this coming on. The explain data engine that we pulled into Tableau, and if you're not familiar with explain data, I'd encourage you to go out and look at that as well. But explain data was sort of another company that we brought in to help bolster our artificial intelligence predictions capability within Tableau. So it's using the same engine for that explain data. So I anticipate a lot more growth in that area as well. Desktop parameters. This is a pretty nice option if you use a lot of parameters. Prior to this release, if you set a parameter to, in this case, 81, it would save that every time it would save it there every time somebody opened it. Well, now you can set it to set it back to a certain parameter next time the desktop is open. Gives you a lot more functionality and granularity in what your constituents are going to see. Desktop data quality warning. So this goes back to that where you publish a data source on your server, a governed, standardized, profiled data source that everybody agrees is a source of truth. This allows you to, with the right plugins, you can go out and say, for some reason a file was locked or didn't come down, wasn't downloaded at the right time, so your data source is not correct. You can go out there and set a data source warning on the server to say, hey, don't look at this, or if you do look at this, make sure you know that the data is not updated. Prior to this, this was only available on the server. So the only way a user on a desktop would be alerted is if they logged into the server to look at the data source. Now, if I connect my desktop to that published data source, I'll get this warning to say, hey, something's wrong, go check the data. This one, again, is a little more annoyance than anything else, but if you've ever upgraded, and obviously I upgrade quite a bit, for at least 4 or 5 times a year, every time you upgrade, your window is empty because it doesn't bring in your most recent workbooks. Well, now you don't have to worry about this. As you upgrade, it'll make sure it keeps track of your workbooks that were there. So again, a small thing, but it was kind of annoying. And then this is the last one. As I said before, this is one of the biggest feature requests from the Tableau community that we've had in several years. Frankly, I don't know why it took so long, but if you're used to an in calculation like you would in SQL, that's now available in Tableau Desktop. You don't have to worry about writing a big gnarly case statement. Visual analytics. Again, more dynamic parameters, and you can see with the sort of animation here that's going on. Prior to this release, if you wanted to say, if you have a data set that updated with a new month's worth of data, you would have to go through and republish that data set to bring in the last date of set of data. Well, now you can just, as you can see, set it to the latest data as your parameter, so it automatically pulls that in, and that's what you see in your list. So again, this was a pretty big feature request too that is pretty exciting that it's in this year. Viz animations. This is another cool one that you can see again in the animation here that's going on the slide, there's a setting on your desktop that as you transition between views in your desktop, it'll show some of that animation. So the example that I used last time I presented was there's a racing bar chart, and if you kind of Google that, you'll see what that is. It's just, it shows you the bar length over time. Well, prior to this release, it took a lot of work to put that in. Now you just have to put that in, put your data on pages, and say run the animations, and it'll run for you automatically. So pretty nice. This is a really nice one. I like this one a lot. I try to incorporate animations into all my dashboards now. Buffer calculations. We're seeing this a lot with COVID now too. So you have a restaurant or an office building where you need to say everybody has to be 6 feet away. You can put in this buffer calculation in there to calculate where those desks or where those restaurant tables can be located across your diagram. This buffer calculation will show you where it overlaps. So, last year we did the make point and the make line sort of distance calculations. This is sort of in addition to that, the buffer calculation. Again, this goes back to a small thing, but a nice thing. If you want to customize what shows on your when you open a desktop up for the first time, you can go through and do that. You can drag and drop these things around to make sure you want to look at you're looking at just what you want to look at. Explain data, again, as I mentioned, we're putting a lot of emphasis on the explain data, sort of the back end part of that. Explain data, if you're not familiar with it, and you can see again here on this GIF here, as you're going, when you visualize something in Tableau, if you want to say, okay, why is this mark so high? In this case, why are there 8,800? Why is the trip distance 8,800 in this month? Explain data allows you to click on it. You click on the little light bulb icon, and it analyzes not just what's showing up in your visualization, but all the other data that it has access to in that data set. So you can see it's not looking at weather conditions in this visualization, but it's saying weather conditions probably explain why that number is so high on that month. So again, I really encourage you. A lot of people, and I am guilty of this too, forget about this piece because it's just a tiny little icon. But as you're doing analysis on your data, it's a really nice feature to use. So, and as part of Explain Data in 2020, we've refined some of the models, and we allow you to have wider data sets. So it just is adding on to enhancing the functionality of Explain Data. Same thing here, where instead of saying go look at all the data to try to explain to Mark, I can go in and select which data I think it needs to look at to explain to Mark. It just gives you a little more finer control over what you're looking at. And TabPy. So if you're working with Python, TabPy now has kind of come into the supported feature set for Tableau. So it you can see it's a 1.0 release. So it was available before, but now it's more tighter integration with Tableau Desktop. And I made to reorder these slides. This is that relationship option that I was talking about prior to in the earlier slide. You can see these, I forget, they call them noodles. Rather than being a straight line, it's a noodle now. So that was the most jarring change for me. It was just the way the lines are drawn now. But it does allow you to get a lot more granular, a lot more control over how you join your tables. Again, I don't want to get into it here because it is quite a big change, but I do encourage you to look at this as you progress to your 2020.2 or beyond. Set action improvement. So this one, and I thought there was an animation on here. So this allows you to, well, I don't want to, I could show it, but I don't really want to take up the time. It allows you to allow the user to dynamically create sets inside of the dashboard. So you don't have to create it yourself and then publish. It allows you to click on these certain marks here, and it'll automatically change everything else and create a set for you. So you can then interact with it. And there's a couple ways. There's another slide here I'll show you. A couple ways to do this. So this one is just by clicking. The other one is you allow them to to dynamically create a set using their interaction there. So again, this allows you to publish a dashboard, give the interactivity to the end user without having to come back and republish something. So set controls was a really popular feature in 2020. And then again, Esri Web Data Connector. If you use Esri prior to 2020, you would have to download the shape files from your server and then link them up in Tableau. With this Esri Web Data Connector, you can now go directly back to your Esri server. You don't have to worry about, and then automatically refresh it. When the data automatically, when it refreshes in Esri, it automatically shows up inside of Tableau. This was a really big feature request too for a lot of people. The web, this one, we're looking at animation here. We talked about animation on your desktop. The pages, that was always available on your desktop. Well, now it's available in your browser as well. So when you publish something, you can show it playing like you see here in the browser as well on the server version. Again, another pretty big feature request that people have been asking about for years. And we've tried to get our web editor up to the same functionality as you get on the desktop. We're not there all the way. Each release that we go through, we're adding more and more features. So we're bringing them more in line between the two. So hopefully, in the future, there will be no difference between developing on the web or developing on your desktop. If you have Explorer roles in your environment, those Explorers are the ones that can exclusively develop on the server version alone. Well, some of those features were not always available in the web version, and Viz and Tooltip was one. So now we allow you to do the Viz and Tooltip inside of the dash or the web editor. Again, adding more functionality, we're adding more layers into the web editor alone. Metrics, this is a pretty big one that came out. This one allows you to define sort of daily KPIs that it's designed for. You just want to see this on your phone as you're going to the office. What were my sales? How many car crashes were there yesterday? You can, as you publish a dashboard, you can click on that inside of the server and say create a metric. And then when you log into your Tableau mobile or even on your Tableau server, these metrics are the first thing that show up when you log in there. So it gives you a pretty nice, concise overall view of just the data you want to see. Then obviously, as you're in your mobile experience, if you want to drill into that dashboard, you always have that option as well.
Eric, we had just one question come from Clay Stewart, and the question is, will we need to upgrade or install TabPy or TabPY 1.0 if we're using the older TabPy?
I don't know. I'll have to research that. If I can get your email or to get back on that. I imagine they're kind of in sync. So if you're on 2020 or 2019.3, you can use that older TabPy. As you go up to 2020, I think it came out in 2020.2 or maybe 2020.2 or 3. When you get to that level, then you're going to have to use the new TabPy connector.
Clay, I'll take your question, and Eric and I will get back to you on that. Thank you for the question. Thanks, Eric.
Yep, thank you. All right. Ask data improvements. If you're on the server and you want to, this is our natural language processing component, you want to go through and type in questions and get the data visualization back. I'm not going to go through all of these because I'm kind of running out of time, but you can see there's a lot more. We're adding on to this. This is a big focus for Tableau as well as the Ask data, so you can get your self-service analytics on your own. Reorder favorites, again, more of the annoying thing. If you're on the server, if you want to see, again, the metrics or a dashboard first, you can see those on the server. That's a good one. If you want to upload a workbook directly to the server, Prior to this release, you would have had to open the workbook and publish it. Now you can just drag the file over or choose a file and it'll publish it for you. Subscribe on refresh when the extract refreshes. If you want to get an updated dashboard with the updated data, you can subscribe on refresh and it'll automatically send it out to you. Shared with me, well, I'm running out of time, so I want to get through some of the other stuff. Automatic suspension. This is good for if you're a server admin, your extract refresh takes up some bandwidth on your server, it'll automatically suspend it if it hasn't been active for 30 days. Login base, again, if you're a server manager or server admin, login-based license management allows you, instead of having to send those keys around that you apply into your desktop, this allows you to activate it by signing into a server. So then when they log in, they automatically get that license applied to their desktop. And same thing, grant license on sign-in. I'll skip over this. External file store. If you want to now store your data off to a LAN drive somewhere, you can perform a backup to that rather than storing it there on your server and taking up space on your server. It allows you to also run the file stores on multiple nodes in a cluster. Improved permissions dialog allows you, it gets a lot more granular, a lot more intuitive. Prep Builder, a cool one. You can now connect to Salesforce. I use this quite a bit. Connect to Salesforce directly with Prep Builder. Incremental data refresh. This allows you to just pull the most recent data from your data set. Prior to this release, it would go out and pull everything in and run it through Prep Builder. Well, you don't always need all that data. This allows you to define a field that says just increment, just give me the incrementally refreshed data. And then this is a big one. Prep Builder, when it first came out, the first thing everybody asked for was, we want to write it back to our database. Prep Builder now in 2020.3 will allow you to do that. So prior to this, you could only push it to a file or publish it to a data source. You can now write it back to one of these 6 database types. I imagine we'll expand that as we go on. Obviously, you want to keep pretty good control over who does that. With that, I'm gonna be done. I'm sorry that I didn't get through all my slides. I thought I could cram them all into 25 minutes, but I didn't. So as I said, I'll send this slide deck out. At the end of the slide deck, there are some links that you can go to that tells you what is in each release, coming soon, and there should be something in there that tells you how to request options. So with that, Stephanie, I think I shall turn it back to you, if that's okay.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So I apologize. We did not give you near enough time for all of what Tableau devs have been working on over the last year or so. So know that we can always come back. And so part of that survey that I alluded to earlier, if there are some new 2020 features that you feel need to kind of have a little bit deeper dive, then we can always incorporate them in future sessions. So I'm hoping that I'm sharing my screen, can chat plus the web page. Can someone let me know if they can see?
Yeah, I'm seeing your screen. I'm seeing it.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to keep talking like I did at the start of our meeting. I just wanted to confirm. Okay, so all right. So where we are is talking about TC20. I wanted to pull up this slide. There were just a couple slides I had that I didn't have on screen. If you don't have our information, feel free to take a screenshot. Again, I'm Stephanie Henry, the TUG leader. Jamie Kimes is on here as well as Melanie Houston. Again, she may not be your specific account executive, rep, but she could help put you in connection with the right person. So that is one thing I skipped over. So as we go through here, these are some slides put together by Tableau to support user group leaders. And so we have a Tableau conference-ish. So hopefully you guys are all been receiving some information, but the conference starts October 6th through the 8th, 3 full days. Tableau is really intentional about making this still valuable and usable event and having it free for everybody. So there won't be 18,000 of us in Vegas having a blast and networking, but we will have the opportunity to come together for 3 days in those virtual meetings. They are more heavily thought leadership focused and not so much of those hands-on. So with that, I'm gonna just go ahead and show you what the screen looks like. So if you're at tc20.tableau.com, this is the landing page. You might have to sign in. I think I'm already signed in. There is just a quick overview of what the 3 days look like. And they have 4 different channels running this year. So be kind of aware of those pieces. As you hover over each of these, it will tell you what that time block on that channel is for. Yes, John Legend will be part of the conversations, and you can see I've added it to my watch list, but you can click on the event name and it will take you to more of that description page. And from here, I found it easiest to read a little bit about it. And if I go back to episode guide, and I'm just showing you this because it was a learning curve for me and what worked best for me as I tried to plan my schedule. But what I appreciated more was this full list, as it loads here now. It's organized in those time blocks. So pardon my scrolling, try not to make you seasick, but if I just transition down to, let's say, this 2 o'clock time block, I can see what the 3 different sessions are going on during 2 to 2:30, read about them, decide if I want to save it to my calendar, and it will prompt what kind of calendar invite, or if I'm choosing not to save that to my calendar, I can add it to my watch list and come back to at a later time and watch. So that's how I found it a little more efficient with planning out my 3 days. There are plenty of other things out on this website. They're coordinating brain dates. There's some posted content, but a lot of great ways to stay connected in here. Word on the street is we might be able to have a Slack channel set up for the Colorado SLED user group. More to come on that and what that would look like, again, for us to stay connected during those 3 days, share ideas, let each other know what some of the great content is, so we can go back and watch it later if it's not one of those channels. So let's see, industry focused, I think, is more on Thursday. So know that there's a lot of great thinking, high level. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is there's a public sector lens. And for the education folks on the call, there is not a lot of, there isn't education content, but there will be support and some events coming post-conference to support the K-12 and higher ed folks that might be on this call. So with that said, we are out of time. Are there any questions for me before we all kind of part ways? It looks like. All right. Well, I just want to, again, thank you all for joining us today in our first virtual meeting. I apologize for any technical glitches that may have come up. It is a learning curve for all of us. So look out for that survey. I'm really seeking your feedback to make this the most valuable time out of your regular workday. So think about how you can participate, whether it's a use case or if you have a skill set that you think might be valuable to share. Know that we're all at different stages of learning Tableau, and we just appreciate your participation. So reach out if you have any questions. Thank you, everyone.